Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the 38th CALLERLAB convention. Today is April the 19th, and this session is Wind in Your Face. Wind in Your Face. I just happened to be in the gentleman's restroom just before we began, and they were talking about the wind in different sessions, and somebody said wind in your face, and then the comment was, is that when you put your head out the window of your car as you're driving along? And anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the dance experience, and we're talking, and hopefully everybody got a copy of the handout that we have back there. It's back on a chair toward the back. But yeah, pass them on out. Bring your copies forward if you could. That would be fabulous. My name is Mike Seastrom. I'm from Los Angeles, California. We have our two panelists here, Jerry Junck. Jerry's from Nebraska originally, and then from Arizona, Mesa, Arizona. And Jim Mayo. Everybody knows Jim, I'm thinking, but Jim's from New Hampshire. And we're glad to be here. We're glad to have you here this afternoon for Wind in Your Face. It's a subject that is very near and dear to the three of us, and I'm sure to others in this room, and to others that may not realize how important it could be. I had the fortunate opportunity to be able to MC the dance last night with our brand new callers, and I thought it took a lot of guts and a lot of gumption for a lot of them to get up and call. But there's elements in calling that you just learn after a long time of teaching and calling, and some of the simple things that a lot of us take for granted after being dancers and being callers for a long time. One of the things that I never take for granted, and I had been dancing quite a while the first time I ever saw this demonstration. Some of you may have seen me do this demonstration before, but it's one that I saw Bob Osgood do years and years ago when I was lucky enough to work with him at a Seastrom. And I thought it was interesting because he was talking to dancers that had been dancing for a long time. And it's on the top of our handout sheet, we talk about the dancer contributions to Wind in Your Face. And a lot of you see how some of dancers dance. I mean, literally they kind of walk and clump along, and their posture's low and their shoulders are down. And literally when they're dancing, their heel hits the floor first. So they're just walking and clumping along. And when I saw Bob demonstrate that on a stage to a group of dancers that I considered experienced dancers and had been dancing a long time, it suddenly dawned on me, this is really an important element in our dance, in the smoothness of the dance. It's the element that as we are trying to talk about, put the wind in your face and talk about the comfort of dancing, it's really important to the dancer. And so I've gotten to the point where I teach it almost my first night of new dancer program when the program is closed. The open nights are closed because for the first few nights I love to just let them dance however they want. And if they hop around, well, hop around. And whatever you're going to do, I'm not going to correct you so much when we first start. But then I kind of stop and I put on my headset and I talk about the walk step versus the dance step. And I'll repeat again, when you're walking, what hits the floor first? Your heel hits the floor first, right? And then your toe. But when you're dancing, it's the exact opposite. Your toe hits and then your heel hits. You've got a posture that's a little bit more of a forward lean. And if you're bent over and your shoulders are down, you're going to get tired and your back's going to get sore. And by the end of the evening, you're going to be tired as a dancer. You're going to run out of gas at the end of that. So what's important about the dance experience is not only the step where that toe hits first and then the heel hits as you're moving along, but there's kind of that forward lean. In other words, you're moving forward because most of our motion is forward. And the other thing that I think is really important is that you put your shoulders back, put your head up so that you can see the other dancers you're dancing with. After all, we're dancing as a unit, as a team of dancers here. And in order to be able to dance successfully and to be where the other dancers are, it's really important that you can see them. So get your shoulders back, get your chin up and your head up. And the other thing that I really find that some of our newer dancers do, and I'm sure some of you have seen it in your doing dancer lessons, is a lot of people kind of get back home and they're kind of run out of, they're out of air. So not only are they trying to get in shape by doing a little bit of dancing, but some of them just flat aren't breathing. I mean, as they run through a right and left through and a lady's chain, they're just so intent, they're literally not breathing. So I try to tell them when you hit a right and left grand or when you hit a promenade or when you're standing home and you're the heads and the sides are doing something, take a real deep breath. Throw your shoulders back, put your head up, and take a really deep breath. That dancer contribution, the dancer being oxygenated, helps them be alert, and plus it helps them be a lot more comfortable, and at the end of the evening, they're not going to be as tired. So again, the dancer contribution to what we do is huge. The other thing that I think that you might notice if you ever contra dance, and that you might not notice so much if you're square dancing all the time, is eye contact. Eye contact as a dancer is critical. Not only critical to dancer success, but critical to dancer enjoyment. And it's another thing that dancers are more comfortable. If somebody that you have a next contact with, or that next handhold with, you're coming toward them, if they can't see you, or they don't even know where you're at, or they're not looking for you, chances are they could miss you, or you're not there with them. So the bottom line is make that eye contact with dancers. When you do a right and left through across the set, look at that gal or that guy that's right straight across you're working with, and make sure that hand is there. It doesn't have to be extended way out. It has to be in close to your body, tight. You're leaning forward slightly. You're making that eye contact. When you swing, make that eye contact. Teach them that early on when you teach them to swing, because if they make that eye contact, they're not going to get dizzy. And last night at Clark's Zesty Contra sessions, we found that a lot of those people were getting dizzy because they weren't making eye contact when they were dancing. So again, teach your dancers that eye contact, because the individual dancer contribution to the wind in their face, to enjoying the smooth dancing experience, is really critical, and it's the first element. So if we accentuate that or teach that, the first part of lessons, I think that's the real key to being able to start having dancers enjoy this wind in your face choreography that we're going to be talking about a little bit more today. Any comments about that? Any other contribution? I know some of you may have a certain way that you might talk about that to your dancers, but make sure that you do include that early on and throughout. If you notice dancers, looking down as they dance and their shoulders are down, they're having a hard time with being able to capture this wind in your face that we're talking about today.
Let me just add one small comment on it. We have talked many times about the importance of the phrase in the music. And mostly in modern square dancing, we don't pay much attention to the phrase. In contra, it's important. But I have always felt that it was worthwhile for dancers to at least know it existed. And I've started off my classes since the beginning of time with the first time I use ladies chain and right and left through, I do it in a strictly phrased way so that the dancers step off on beat number 1 and take 8 steps to complete the action. First couple of nights of class, the first time they encounter it, it at least makes them aware that the music and the dance are connected somehow. And I think that's a very useful thing to do. You clearly can't continue that in modern square dancing forever, but it's very important to at least let them know that somewhere in the experience, the music and the dance are connected in a very direct way.
Jim, if we could find a well-phrased piece of music and just get 2 couples on the square, could you just demonstrate that? I think it'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, 2 pairs. That's enough. 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4. Heads forward up to the middle and come back. 2 ladies chain straight across. Chain them back. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Heads up to the middle and then come back with a right and left through. They step off on beat 1. Right and left back. Join hands, circle to the left. Circle to the right, go the other way back. Go up to the middle, and you come right back, alum and left. Grand, right, and left, and so forth. Just to let them experience doing the dance action fitted precisely to the music. And that means you have to give the call before the start of the phrase so that their dance action can start out that way. When you teach both ladies chain and right and left through, it's not too hard to do. And first time they're encountered, they're going to go heads across and back, sides across and back, heads across, sides across, heads back, sides back. All of those can be matched exactly to the phrase of the music, and let, at least in their introduction to square dancing, let them experience the idea that the music and the dance do have a connection.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Also, we want to talk a little bit about counter dancing, because that's another factor in our dance step, and I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Junck. Jerry?
Counter dancing. Now, I'm going to digress just a minute. One of the reasons that we're talking about smooth dancing is because we see lots of dancing that isn't smooth anymore. Part of that is we're not paying enough attention to the music. We don't let the music talk to the people. We don't give them a chance to hear that music, or we have selected music that doesn't dance. And that's just fact. The other thing is we have gone into this realm of sight resolution is everything. Sight resolution is a tool. But if you're talking about smooth dancing, you have to have a plan as you're calling. You have to have your tip, at least an idea of what you want to feature in that tip. And whether you use modules that take you from point A to point B, you need flow modules that you know where they move you throughout the dance, because you don't want to call swing through and then take a look and, spin the top. You need to know what you're going to call before you get there. And that's happening, and sight is causing that to a great degree. So we need to have a plan with your tip, what you're going to do. You need to be aware of, we'll get back to this, counter dancing, things such as a Dixie style to a wave, and let's get the two couples up again. That works. Hi, Vic. One of the things that I teach, and I teach this with when I teach Dixie style, is that the boys, and I teach things standard. That's all I'm going to talk about today is standard. I want the boys to understand that they have to adjust or counter dance. And I do it this way. Heads touch quarter. Scoot back. Boy, fold behind the girl. I simply start to teach right here. And I tell everybody that square dancing, if it's done properly, unless you hear the word left in front of it, starts with the right hand. It's going to be a right hand followed by a left hand. And I'll say, girls, to do Dixie style, shake right hands. What hand is available? Give a right pull by, left touch a quarter, make a wave. But that boy is directly behind the girl. Do you understand that? If you read the definition, it says on a double track. I think that's how it reads, Frank. Isn't that close? Okay. All right. Now, to get out of this Dixie style, again, counter dancing is important. And part of the reason we don't see guys use Dixie style to wave, they can't get out of it. If you want to use Dixie style, it's got a left hand. It's a wonderful call. But if I want the boys to cross run, the ladies, the ends are going to adjust. There's only 4 spots in that ocean wave. So the ends have to slide together because the centers are going to replace the ends. Boys cross run, or centers cross run. Counter dancing, it's so important. All right, ladies trade. And if you dance to me, you're going to hear a bunch of centers trade, because if they use the right hand, the next hand is going to be left. And that's just the way I call, and I believe in it. So swing through, boy run, bend the line. Okay, do a right and a left through. And if I'm working with new dancers, after I've explained this Dixie style, done it a number of times, and got them started to realize how it works, I go with this point. Hang in there, Vic. Hang in there. I will actually say, boys slide behind her. Ladies lead Dixie style to an ocean wave. And I'll show you how you can time that. Boys cross run to the right hand side. Ladies trade in the middle. Swing through. Boy run. Wheel and deal to face those two. Get her out of it through. Boys slide behind her. Ladies lead Dixie style to an ocean wave. The boys cross run. The ladies trade in the middle. swing through. Boy, run, bend the line. Counter dancing, Dixie styles will wave. Centers cross run, ends slide together. That's what makes smooth dancing. Did they stop as they were going through on this? There's no stop to it. And it's all pretty standard, but it does use that left hand wave. That's what we're talking about, counter dancing. Am I right? Okay. Thank you, guys. Mike?
One other example of where these things went. Where a long time ago, we had goalpost choreography, and we had the heads down the center, separate around one, come into the center, and do things. And in teaching that, we made a big point that the inactive people, the side couples, had to move around those people as they went around, and we could teach the concept of accommodating each other's movements. We taught the non-active dancers to be active. Much of our teaching these days, we don't make a point of that, even with the ladies' chain. It's quite proper for the gentleman to step back and to the right as the ladies go into the ladies' chain, and to start to turn as they approach you so that you're ready to take their hand and turn them. I'm afraid that a lot of those things are no longer mentioned in the teaching, and it affects our counter dancing.
It's huge. I think it starts out with a heads promenade halfway and the sides are moving into the middle, but simply enough. And with the ladies' chain, the same thing. Gentlemen, extend that left hand. Have that landing pad ready for the lady. If it's there, she's got a place to put it. And it's just a simple movement, but I think that's something that's really important to accentuate with your dancers, or to explain to them early on, that even if they're the inactive dancer, they are still active and they are still accommodating the other dancers. It allows that square to breathe a little bit more. Very often when you have the heads doing an action in the middle, it's nice for the sides to just step back just a little bit, give them a little bit of room in there, allow them to execute that call that they're doing in the center, or a series of calls in the center, and then when they come out to you, you're right back there into position again. So that inactive dancer is really important. So make sure your dancers understand that even though they're not actively involved in that particular series of calls, that they are there to accommodate those that are actively dancing at that point. Jerry?
All right. Another thing I want to talk about is changing the focus, and I want a square this time. I'd like a square of dancers if I could. Good-looking, quality people. Yeah. I'm not worried about resolution here, guys. I'm not talking about that. But something that I don't think we, especially as new callers, are aware of is the fact that dancers can get locked in to one position and not realize that as a caller we have changed the focus. And I'll demonstrate a little bit of what I mean here. Well, you bound to the perfect corner to the head, square through you do, and you get 4 ends around the ring you go. Make an ocean wave, swing through. Boys run around a girl, couples circulate. Do a half tag, swing through. All right, they did it. They are callers. They did it. They are callers.
They're professionals. Yeah. Don't try this at home, right?
Centers trade. Okay, boys run around the girls. Pass the ocean, make a wave. Swing through. Boy run. Couples circulate. And I know I got to have this circulate. I got to have flow. The thing that I did a half tag and a swing through. It's not wonderful. It isn't, because where's our focus right now? Down these lines. But I'm going to go to an ocean wave. Watch what we do if we do it this way. Do a half tag. Make a wave. Centers trade. Now swing through. That's what we're talking about, wind in your face. The other thing, say, okay, scoot back. Boys run. Star through. Touch a quarter. What do we see here? We see a box of 4 people, don't we? Is that what you see? Well, actually you don't. Scoot back. Boys go. Now, by doing this, I'll say split circulate. We have changed the focus from that ocean wave to that box with a simple thing like the scoot back. It changed the focus. What do we have here? Centers trade. Got a wave. Swing through. I would not call a split circulate from here. I would call scoot back. Split circulate. Centers trade. Swing through. Scoot back. Centers trade. Swing through. Boys run around a girl. Do you understand what I'm saying by that? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Changing the focus from that ocean wave to, in order to make a split circulate work better, just to change their focus into the foursome, so you understand what happens. All right. Now we can carry this a little further. I do some stuff with cast-offs where I just talk to people. All right, star through. Touch a quarter, check a new wave, centers trade. Swing through with the right and left. Got a girl with the right. Cast 3/4 till the girls touch. The girls trade. Swing through. Boy run. Ferris wheel. Now, the thing about this is if we're going to have smooth choreography, we also have to talk about helper words. Notice I said girls touch, girls trade, centers pass through, touch a quarter, make a wave. And I get ripped on this from time to time. Guys say, well, you help them too much. You don't have to say step to wave. No, probably not. But nobody paid to watch me call. If they're standing, they're watching. Doesn't cost me anything to say a few words.
And that anticipation allows the dancers, as Jerry just said, to change their focus. Again, it points their focus so it allows them to anticipate just a little sooner and smooth out the dance experience.
Now we've got a wave. Centers trade. Swing through. And as you go on through the evening and you want to change your choreography, you want to work with different arrangements, fine and dandy. But your first time that you start something like a cast 3/4 from a wave, at least for me, and that doesn't make anybody else wrong. This is my opinion. I want to cast 3/4 so I can talk to the centers. I'm going to have the girls in the center. Cast 3/4 till the girls touch and the girls trade today. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of interesting, seeing as how we rehearsed with this square like 2 hours for this. But you bet. Swing through. Boy run. Now watch how you can do this. Ferris wheel, into the middle you go. Centers, go right out and through. Turn a girl. We'll just give you better people to work with here. Pass through. Touch a quarter, check a new wave. Centers trade. Swing through. With a girl in your right. Cast 3/4 till the girls connect. Girls trade. Swing through. Boy run around a girl. Ferris wheel, into the middle. Center 4, pass through. Touch a quarter. Scoot back and boys go. Centers trade. Swing through. Now I've got the boys looking out. Cast 3/4 till the boys touch. And the boys trade. And the boys run. Ferris wheel, into the middle. Now I want to take this a step further. Centers star through. Past the ocean. Swing through. Look at the outside to extend to a right hand. Cast 3/4 till the boy and a girl touch. Centers trade. Boys run around a girl. I'm normal. But I went through a boy, boy, girl, girl. Was it smooth? It's smooth. And it's about hands. Which hand did I have ready? Did I talk to them? And what helper words did you use? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with using helper words, in my opinion. That and $1 buys you a cheap cup of coffee. But it's my philosophy. I don't like to be on a soapbox, and yet I am in a way. I think we have so forgotten to put music in our dancing and to let people experience just flowing through the activity. For instance, here's another one. Everybody dance plus. Okay. Pass through with a wheeling deal. Centers pass through. Touch a quarter. Follow your neighbor at his bread. Ladies trade. Swing through. Boy run around a girl. Couples circulate. Chain down the line. Turn the lady. Send her Dixie style of an ocean wave. Trade the wave. Explode and run on it through. Turn the girl, ladies lead. Dixie style of an ocean wave. Boys trade. Take a peek, trade the wave. Explode and run on it through. Turn the girl, just the ends. Load the boat. Centers, single curse, circle to a wave. The girls connect, fan the top. Ping pong, circulate. Extend. All smooth, all just watching what hands are we using. Am I going right hand, left hand? We did a fan the top. We did a Dixie style. We did a trade the wave. We had just the ends load the boat. The center single circle to a wave, fan the top. That's what I'm talking about, wind in your face. Now, did I just cite that? Yeah, I probably could have. I'm not into resolution here right now. But the point is, I had a flow module in my mind. I had a plan to what I'm going to do. And we need to think about what you're going to call. You don't just get up there and say, okay, let's try this. Have a plan, because that plan also comes through your confidence projection through the microphone, that you indeed know where you're going, you indeed know what you're going to be calling, and consequently you will have those helper words available when you know they're going to need them, because that module, whether it's a complete module or like this, just flow module, having that plan allows you to continue that continuous calling to that music. Make sense?
Absolutely, and that's what we're talking about. Also, that those helper words allow the dancers to anticipate. You guys, should we hang on, Jim? Keep our square. Let's square your sets up just so again. One of the other factors in body flow is that dancer anticipation, and if you're helping them with helper words, that anticipation is huge. Now, there's also a timing issue, and the timing is of our dancing is huge. You're going to have to run them. So we want to have Jim talk a little bit about. Are we all set there? Well, good. While we resolve the height issue of our square, so that we can poignantly make eye contact with each other without looking up or down. Thank you, Rod. Jim has some great information on the timing of our delivery and the timing of our dance.
You just saw Jerry demonstrate a good timing, beautiful timing, very, very successfully. Unfortunately, there's a whole lot of dancing out there these days that does not have that nice, smooth, continuous motion. And I hope that we can become aware of it. Many of you probably have seen this demonstration before. It took a little practice for me to learn to call with bad timing. Surprisingly difficult, because first of all, I want to start off with perfectly straightforward routine that has timing that lets you move continuously, as Jerry's just did. Start anywhere, whatever. I'm going to do it just for the sides because the spacing's better. Heads, watch the sides go forward, come back, and then square through 4. Right and left through. Pass to the center. Square through. 3 hands. Left down the man to the corner, then square him up there. Let's try that again. Heads, you show them how. Move forward. Come right back. Square through 4 hands. Right and left through. Pass through the center, square through 3. Left down a man to the corner. Square him up there, back home, and then Jerry, turn off the music now. Okay. In this case, no interruption. You didn't have to stop your action. You moved continuously, and that's the goal of good timing. One of the things I did there was to totally remove all the extraneous words, just the commands given at exactly the time that let you move without hesitation, without interruption. No challenging choreography, nothing you had to think about, so I didn't have to adjust the timing for that. Now, let's see what happens if I change the timing just a little bit. Sides, move forward, up, come right back, and then square through. Four hands, right on left through, pass to the center, square through 3, Allemande left. All right. Okay, now, that wasn't quite smooth, was it? A little different. Felt different? Not the same experience? How big an adjustment in timing did I make? 1 beat. I delayed the call from where it should have been given by 1 beat. It changes the feel of the dance very noticeably. And unfortunately, most of the square dancing that's going on in our world today has that as the best available. To do it without any interruption is almost unavailable. But a lot of dancing has a 1 or 2 beat delay between, not all the calls. Some of them, the call comes too soon. But most of it is a beat or 2 late. Particularly if you're creating the choreography as you're calling it, there is a large share of our caller population that must see where the dancers are before they can decide what the next call will be. Because they're not visualizing the end point as they start into the action for each call. If you don't know what the square is going to look like when they finish the call you just gave, your timing is atrocious. Guaranteed. It's not an if. It's guaranteed. Now, the other alternative to timing that's 1 beat late is, of course, a little faster. Let's see what happens then. Heads go forward and back. Square through 4. Then a right or left through. Pass to the center. Square through 3. Allemande left. All right. That's a different kind of dancing too, isn't it? And there isn't a whole lot of that, certainly not consistently that, but a lot of times callers will be working out something and then they'll get to a module that they know. And so they go stop, 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 and then they run through the next 3 calls because they know that's what's coming. And they're on their way to an Allemande or something. But the point I want to make about timing is that this is not an occasional era. This is the way square dancing is being done these days. And in that process, we have sacrificed dancing. I know none of you are doing this. All of yours is flawless and without a problem. You may claim, and it's certainly true, that you can't pay attention to all this good timing thing and still keep the choreography right. And I think that's maybe what's happened. I know that a whole flock of callers don't do a lot of programming these days. I learned to program a long time ago, and in fact, Ed Gilmore said, keep records. And so I have, in a drawer at home, a notebook that lists every tip of every dance I have called for the last 62 years. I keep a record. Now, those dances in the old days, for the first 25 years, all had names. They were memorized routines that we did over and over again. And those you could really call with the right timing because you knew exactly what was coming next. Then we started doing this sight calling thing. And for sight calling, you really have to know what's coming. And a huge share of callers who profess to be sight callers are not always aware of exactly what the square will look like when they finish the call you just gave. And if you don't know exactly what it's going to look like when they finish the next 2 calls, your timing is guaranteed to look more stop and go than continuous. Thank you. Don't mean to beat off the point, but there's an awful lot of terrible timing out there. Go.
Very good.
Yeah, give him the microphone so he can.
Charlie?
In regard, we have
you are?
lost Charlie Fagan, Torrance, California. In regard to our activity, we've lost two elements, of course, timing and styling. The other thing, is that we also see a lot of calls being stacked on top of each other, which certainly affects the timing. And I think we need to go back to the basics and quit stacking and start dancing on the beat.
Well, let me take note of the fact that the last version I did there was stacked calls.
Yeah.
They were all given too soon, and
Exactly.
that makes you could see the difference in the way that the action moved on the floor. It stopped being neat and smooth and trim and started being a little scrambly. And for a very large share of dancers, that will also cause breakdown. They just won't be able to do the action if you stack calls, or not even stacking, just giving the call too far before they need it. One of the classic examples of this, Jerry Haig isn't with us, but Jerry put out my favorite singing call of all time, Hey Lily. And it was just a fabulous call, and it had a great figure. The way it was called on the record and the way the wording in the cue sheet said, the command, it was a heads right and left through something, and square through 5 hands, and then a right and left through the outsides. The way that call was recorded and on the cue sheet, the command to do the right and left through came just as they finished the third hand of that square through 5. And a whole army of dancers did the right and left through with the wrong couple. It killed the popularity of that dance for a long time, because that was a time when we called dances the way they came in the cue sheet. I mean, we didn't invent choreography in 1963. We called it the way it came to us, and we called it that way, and our dancers had a whole lot of trouble with that figure. If you just changed it by delaying that command 2 beats, then it became my favorite singing call, and I used it for decades. Still do.
It's huge. It's huge. I know. I feel like I almost have to digress a little bit about something that we talk about in caller schools, where we're talking about timing, and we're talking about the command time, the amount of time that it takes to actually make the command. How many beats does it take to say the call? And then, of course, there's the lead time, and this is, like I say, going back to the basics of timing. How long does it take for that dancer to process what you just said to them? How long does it take for them to know what's coming next? And then, of course, there's the execution time, and knowing how many steps it takes to make each or to do each of those calls. And I think you have to be aware of that in addition to when that command is given.
The lead time issue depends on how familiar the choreography is for the dance group you're calling for. If they're familiar with it, you can shorten the lead time. But if you're doing something that's unusual for them, even a little bit, then you give them a little extra lead time. If it's more than a little bit unusual, you give them a lot more lead time. But that's an adjustment that you make call by call. Every single call involves a decision about exactly how far ahead you will give that command. And, yeah, it's a lot of work. You can make it almost automatic, and one of the ways I've done it is to keep my choreography simple, so I can maintain a constant lead time. If you want to make it intricate, that's your product, and that's fine. That's not the product I sell.
But the other point of that, as he's saying, is put yourself in the dancer's spot. If you have not called a call all night long, for instance, to fan the top, you've not mentioned that, or you're going to, at the mainstream program, going to do a spin chain through, it's nice to give them a little bit of extra lead time to process that, or you're promenading home or something, you say, hey, let's do a little spin chain through. All of a sudden that dancer cues up a little bit, boom, it pops up out of their long-term memory, because most of us understand that dancers that have been dancing a long time, they have these calls in their long-term memory. And if it sits down there for long enough and they never hear that command, or they never are dancing that command for a long time, it takes just a few beats, or maybe another beat or so, to bring that back up again. So if you pop that into their head as they promenade home, or just as you start the tip, say, let's do a little spin chain through, all of a sudden it pulls it right out of their long-term memory, poop, right up in the top of their head, and they're ready for it without all the lead time, without the big surprise that it's going to take a little bit more time for them to bring it up and actually do the call.
Remember that a 1 beat adjustment of timing is a half a second. That's pretty fine tuning when we adjust the delivery of our call by a half a second or a second. Doesn't sound like much, but it makes a huge difference in dancer success and the flow of the action.
Jerry?
All of this comes down to hands, music that lets it talk to the dancers. A lot of 4/4 music doesn't lend itself well, I think, to patter. That's just my opinion. I listened just a little bit ago to the alternative music thing. I'm a dinosaur. It's not my bag. And I don't mind being a dinosaur. It fits my personality. I use some, but I don't use a lot of it. I'm very reluctant to use it. Mike asked me if I would call Wind in Your Face to ZZ Top. Probably not. He named a whole bunch of people I'd never even heard of in that session. But I do have this thing right here. Give me two couples. Mike, come on up. Give me two couples. Card point. Do the rattle it through, turn the lady round, send her Dixie style to an ocean wave. The boys cross run to the right hand side. The ladies trade in a little swing through the right and left. Boys run around a girl. Bend the line and rattle it through. Turn the lady past the ocean, make your wave. Swing through, spin your top, turn right, turn left, and rattle it through and turn the lady around you go. That's how I would use alternative music. It's not my favorite. I can call to it, but I still like that flow, and I don't think it lends itself as well. It's my opinion, and that's, whether it's right or it's wrong, it's my opinion. Little of it, to me, would go a long ways. Mike?
The other thing we talk about is tempo, and watch your dancers' feet. Your dancers, as they're dancing along, their feet are going to tell you, are they really struggling to get their feet down and moving along there, particularly if you're using a 4/4 beat. If they're some of that, you need to slow it down a little bit to watch that, so that they're not trying to chug along and run through it, where they get to the point where they're starting to think, well, maybe I need to take one step to every 2 beats. They're just where they get to start walking and they're not dancing with the music at all anymore. Sure, I think we're looking at. I don't know. Do we have 4/4 there or? And go forward, up and back, and a rattle it through and turn the girl lead to a flutter wheel. Sweep a quarter more, then pass the ocean there, and the boys circulate, girls smile. Swing through, boys trade, spin the top. Move up and rattle it through, turn a little girl, and then move forward, up and back. You pass the ocean there. Actually, their feet are moving along because you can't vary the speed on this, can you? No. But with our computers, very often, we're not looking at our speed. We're not thinking about it. It's just that's what I've got it recorded. Or maybe if you're running a certain type of a program, you're not used to changing the speed. Well, look at your dancers' feet. Watch to make sure that they can comfortably dance along with the beat of the music without feeling like they're just running along. When they start skipping steps a little bit, swing through, boy run, bend the line, reverse your flutter, then pass through, partner trade, pass the ocean, swing through, spin your top, and around on and through. Girls lead to a Dixie style. They get ocean wave. This is perfect kind of metering, and we're smoothing right along here. It's funny. Sometimes, how many ever other call with other callers sometimes, and it's their machine and it's on, and they can't slow it down, or they're using something that they can't alter, and they're running, and so you have to call a whole lot different, and it's a struggle. So the thing that I want to say about tempo is that watch your dancers' feet. Watch the expression on their face. If they're going like this and their eyes are, it's kind of widened and they've got that look on their face with the pressed muscles and all that, give them a break, but pay attention to that, because very often that facial expression and their feet are going to tell you you're too darn fast. If they're clumping along and you're just slowly lumbering along, you could be going too slow. But again, watch your dancer's body language. They'll tell you.
You don't want to see a terrified look, and yet you don't want to see too many dead people standing up. So you need to keep that in mind. Thank you guys very much, unless Jim has something else.
No, I'm not for them.
One comment I'll make before Jim does, and I'll step aside. The complexity of our choreography has become exponential for what it was when I started, and that's a long time ago. As Jim Mayo would say, it was decades and decades ago for me as well. So our complexity has so become exponentially more difficult, and that has caused us to lose a lot of our timing. It should not have, but it has. And yet, every once in a while, I am so pleasantly surprised. I mentioned this another session that we did, and the same two people are sitting in here, Vic and Debbie Cedar. A few years ago, Mike took me to a Vic Cedar advanced dance, and I'm the guy that had the terrified look. Because I went there, I said, Mike, I'd love to go along, but I won't dance. I call advanced, but I can't dance to Vic Cedar. Well, we get there. Guess what? They're one man short.
All afternoon, so we had to dance all afternoon.
And I'm thinking, I don't want to be where Vic Cedar was. I have to tell you, not because he's sitting here, was one of the most enjoyable afternoons of dancing that I've been through in a long time. It was so smooth, so well executed, and the hand usage and the flow was wonderful. I was so glad that I had gone. And that proves that you can call advanced the same way you can call mainstream. And not because you're sitting here, Vic. You just really impressed me.
The other thing about that was that there is a level of complexity that can be introduced to the dancer, so the dancer anticipates what's coming next. You build your choreographic sequences. We have sessions like that at this convention even. And some callers are masters at being able to do that, so that at the end of the tip or the patter call, the dancers are doing sequences and going through choreography that's far more complex than they ever could if you just called it flat out. So knowing that ahead of time, and if you're getting into some choreography that may be different for your dancers or even complex for your dancers, help them get to step 1, step 2, step 3. A guy that used to do it in a fabulous way, and as you promenaded home, he'd say, or he'd go page 1, and he would start to call along. And then he would go page 2, and then you'd start again. And Jerry Schatzer is what I'm talking about. And then as you promenaded home, you page 3. And so the dancer kind of knew, well, what's he going to do next? And that anticipation. There's another caller out there that'll go, let's see, what is it, Anyway, the bottom line is it gets the dancer thinking a little bit, and it allows you as a caller to just take your dancers a step further, so that by the end of that tip, you are just flying, and you're doing choreography that you'd be hiccuping to as a dancer, because it would take you that lead time. So you're helping the dancer with their lead time with your choreography. So think about that as you call a sequence.
That can be as simple as forward, up, and back you reel, pass through, wheel and deal. I said I'm a dinosaur. I said that. But little things like that, and what I was using earlier, girls touch, girls trade. So they have something to look for. Set your choreography up, and it takes some planning. As I said, I enjoyed Vic's dance. It was a Christmas time, I think. We did a Christmas tree thing. And we get into this, and I'm thinking, all right, to get out of this, Vic, and he did. And it was just slicker than a whistle. But he didn't just call that. is what I'm saying. He knew where he was going. He knew how he was going to set it up. He knew what he had to do to help us through that, and especially some of us more than others. And yet when he got there, boom, he had us out. He had us to a corner, and it was wonderfully smooth. It was just a wonderful dance. That's what we're talking about. But he didn't just cite that. And he knew where he was going. Now, he did some asymmetric stuff he cited out, and I would need 3 months with him in a dark room before I could understand that. But it all worked, and it was all smooth.
One nice example of that is taking place as we sit here. There's another session going on called Extended Applications, and Ted Lazat, who was here in the last session, is doing that with John Marshall. I have seen Ted do this, and he is a master at getting people through things that they can't dance. He does it by very careful build-up of the sequences so that he introduces just one new idea and each time through and extends it. And that's what they mean by extended applications. I watched him do a session called a Challenge Plus program. It had a funny name. But he had 16 squares on the floor, and I knew most of the dancers, and I knew that they could not possibly do what they were doing. They did it because he led them through it so skillfully with his build-up of the choreography step by step. The other point I want to make is on the back of your handout is a list of things that are available from the home office. You can download them. And one of them in particular is of interest. I was lucky to take part in it. It's the Notes from a Tempo workshop. We did it in November of 1962, and Don Beck set it up. We got 4 squares of dancers and 5 callers. And we spent about 3 hours experimenting with tempo, the beats per minute, and trying to see what difference it made to the dancing experience. And we talked with callers and the dancers and went back and experimented. We really had a great night. All of the dancers were long-time, skilled, experienced dancers, so we weren't dealing with unfamiliar choreography. We just wanted to know what difference it made, what tempo you ran. John Hendren was one of them, and he typically calls at about 116 beats a minute. My comfortable speed these days is 124. John and I work together, and dancers can dance back and forth to us without having to adjust. The difference there is timing, and the end result of that whole experimental session was that the sense of speed is determined more by the timing than it is by the tempo. And if you have good timing at different tempos, then it will feel faster or slower. But if you maintain a constant tempo, you can totally change the dancer's perception of speed by the way you adjust the timing. It was a real shock. We had not realized that, and it was a very interesting experimental session. It's only 1 page, and I recommend that you go online and capture it and go from there.
Jim alluded to one other thing. He said extended applications. Everything I did here is pretty much standard. And I don't call a lot away from standard, but I can extend it. But I've seen so many guys go to a festival and hear a guy do something really cute, and they'll take that home and, man, I'm going to call that. What they don't realize is that was probably called about the 4th tip or the 5th tip of the evening, and the guy had taken 3 tips to set up what he did. The novice caller or the inexperienced caller will say, man, I can do that. No, you can't, because you didn't set up, you didn't have a plan to make that possible. The experienced caller will take 3 or 4 tips, or maybe even if it's a festival, maybe Friday night, work some choreography so that he can make sure that'll work Saturday. And that's how much planning it takes, Rod.
Rod Shipping from Lancaster, California. But what you were saying about the 3rd, 4th tip, it takes that many tips for the dancers to tune into you. That's when you start really changing and adding to, because gotten accustomed to your styling, your timing, your voice, by the fourth tip, you can start extending that stuff.
The other thing that I think we have not touched about, but I think you might have noticed that with Jerry's calling, is that the direction, the clockwise and counterclockwise direction, turning direction of the dancers, that's just critical. Because you can flow along, but if everybody's turning clockwise the entire time, or even if you've got 2 dancers out of the 8 dancers always going clockwise and just spinning around, it's kind of like they're on a skateboard or they're, turning down a drain or something like that. By the end of the tip, these people are going to be dizzy and worn out. And so you'll notice that Jerry used the center's trade to reverse that direction.
Yeah. Have you ever left a dance where your right hip hurt? You went one direction all night.
The Dixie style is a very useful call in that regard because it changes to the left-hand action.
Absolutely.
It makes a big difference. We don't want the wind in your face to be a tornado.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
May I use that in my next set?
I like that. I like that. Yes.
Another one of the best choreographies, one of the smoothest choreographers I ever danced to, and has become just a wonderful friend, is sitting right here, and that's Frank Lane. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Nobody understood timing, hand usage, and wrote better choreography than Frank.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Questions? Anybody?
Ernie, wait a minute, Ernie.
This is something that's well known. Frank Lane is the oldest active caller in the world.
Does that mean, what's that make Flippo?
I asked Frank to send me, just before the convention, send me a little biography, just a quick biography, and the last thing he wrote is, "I'm older than dirt." Any questions, concerns, anything anybody else wants to talk about? Like I say, there's some great information on the back of this.
Frank.
All right.
This is Frank Lane.
I should defend myself against Ernie, but I'm not going to. I don't call, but I dance now. And one of the things that has bothered me at the Plus program, most callers, it seems to me, are vision sighting. They're watching, and load the boat worries me to death because I'm always an end dancer. And that caller does not realize it takes 2 more beats for the end than it does for the intricate centers. So think about this when you're calling Plus.
Also, one of the things I will say, because I've been privileged to have Frank come and dance to me whenever I get down into the Tucson area, and I call that an honor. To watch Frank dance, if you want to call off somebody, watch him, because he's just right there. It is so smooth. It's a privilege, Frank. It really is.
How many of you use that tool? Know dancers or pick out dancers on the floor that are just right there. You see, if you're not using that tool, start looking around the entire floor. Not just the dancers that are always making it in your sight, but make sure you're watching other dancers that are just smoothly executing the calls, the dancers that are dancing that timing. Watch them as they dance, and it will be enlightening.
Greg?
I actually had to go to that backwards because I was, Greg Anderson, by the way, Colorado. I had a square down front, and I knew after a few moments that they were rushing it. So I purposely had to avert my gaze from that entire square for that reason.
One of the things we should keep in mind is we're talking about the ideal situation with choreography that's comfortable for everybody on the floor. That's not how we call dances. We never encounter that situation. You always have a range of skills from front to back and from side to side in one square. You'll have a variety of skills. And so all of this talk about, the perfect timing and exactly the right delivery of the call is a wonderful theory, but it's not the way the world lives. One of the skills of a really good caller is to be able to balance these components for the entire room. And if one of the hazards of sight calling is that you get glued to the square that's making it so that you can resolve, and you lose sight of the square back there. If all you've got is 2 squares, not so bad maybe. But if you've got 14 or 15, you really need to be aware of the flow of the entire floor. And the adjustment of call timing by 1 second that I mentioned becomes a half a second, a quarter second. It can make the difference between success and failure. It can make a drastic difference in the feel of the flow of the dance. It is a major part of the presentation of your dance. And one of the hazards, again, of sight calling, of not having a tip plan, a plan for what you're going to do in this tip. Jerry talks about deciding to give them an experience in the 3rd tip that will make the 5th tip easier for them. I know very, very few callers who do that kind of evening programming, and even fewer who plan a tip to know. I'm guilty to some extent. I know exactly which calls I'm going to feature in each tip of each evening, but I don't necessarily know exactly how I'm going to do it. These days, I'm doing it very much the same way I have learned to do it successfully for a very long time. But if you've never made a plan, if you don't follow a routine that's familiar, you have given up one of the valuable tools that we have in our toolbox.
It doesn't really make any difference. One of the last things I'd like to say is I have this pet peeve about our singing calls, because occasionally we will do a grand square and we become enamored with the song and try to sing the song all the way through. What do we got?
Sides face grand square, I remember to this day.
5, 6, 7, 8,
Bright red Georgia Valley,
13, 14, 15, 16,
how it stuck to the tires after the summer rain.
27, 28, 29,
Circle you and a dog named Boo.
It's a wonderful song. Did you see, though, before we got to 32, he was given the next command. Some of those songs, when you're singing your words on your grand square, it comes to 32 and you've got the whole floor standing, and then you're going to take the first 3 or 4 beats of the next musical phrase and say, 4 ladies chain across, and then sing that one. So instead of giving the dancers the first beat of the musical phrase, they're standing there listening to you finishing your song. And it just drives me crazy, even if you have to cut the words a little bit. Now the music, actually, the words ended before the end of the song.
Yeah, that one's exceptional. I usually cut off the taglines on a grand square. I just can't do it any other way.
You got Amarillo by Morning?
Yeah.
There's another one. I mean, if you just sing it like George Strait, you're going to be at the end of the thing, and the dancers are just standing there, and they're waiting for you to give them the next command. So sometimes you have to change the words just a little bit to get to, so that you can allow that. So give them the next command to give them the number 1 beat. It's huge. And it really, whether you know it or not, or whether even the dancers pick up on it right away, it really changes the sides, face, grand square. Amarillo, sides, face, grand square. Amarillo by morning, up from San Antonio. Everything that I've got is just what I've got on. Alamana left and weave the ring when the sun. So I changed the words a little bit. I got it right. You can eliminate them, you can speed them up, you can cut them out, whatever you want to do, but give that dancer the number 1 beat. If you just sing the whole thing along and then you do 4 ladies chain, and they're just standing there. So think about giving the dancers the number 1 beat when you, because you'll flip it over on the flip side. Some of the callers call on that flip side. Don't give them the number 1 beat. So think about that. Think if that's the way the flip side is, and if that's the way the words are written on the singing call, don't just take that as gospel. Fix it. Fix it so that it works out.
Not only that, if you do what he just said, 4 ladies chain, chain back, Alaman left, promenade home, or whatever you do, you're going to discover that they're not going to be anywhere near home, probably about 8 steps from home when you got to start your figure. And so you're going to have to adjust your figure. It's just listen to your music.
It's interesting, too, on the figures of our singing calls, because very often I'll hear a singing call figure and the partner change is halfway across the set from their home position. And you swing and promenade, and your dancers literally promenade 8 steps while you're singing the 16-beat tag.
Yeah. And when they get home, then they stand there and see if you're zipped.
Years and years ago, we used to take our dancers home, twirl them out, spin them back, and swing until the sequence was over. The dancers don't do that anymore. And that's been a long, long, long time ago that happened. But the dancers don't do that anymore, so we have to be aware when they get home, they're done. They're waiting for the next. What are you going to call next? And if they're just standing there listening to you sing the words of the song all night long, that gets a little bit. So think about when you write a singing call figure, or even when you pick up a record. Not all of them guarantee that partner change and that swing and promenade, or when you start to sing your words, where those dancers are. Find out. Work it out with your checkers. See where those dancers are, and let that figure go. Don't. You're not married to it.
We had a couple of closing thoughts. Coming down to the wire, aren't we? 3:45 is it? Yeah. 2 observations. One, the nicest thing that somebody can say to me at the end of the dance is, I go home from your dance not tired. And that's how I know my timing has been as good as I can make it. The other one is, if you're really serious about knowing whether your timing is good, there is a way to find out. Have somebody do a videotape and take it home, and in the privacy of your own room, with no one else around, watch it. You can see the stop-go very clearly. Unless you close your eyes and don't want to see it.
Okay.
Or dance to it yourself. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. Dancers have. Listen, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. How about a nice hand for Mr. Jerry Junck, Jim Mayo. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the convention.
This is not for the tape, and when whoever's listening for the tape, this cuts off. But at that Vic Cedar dance, I was... Oh, this is fun. I'd have paid for this. I had to sit one tip. I was sitting one tip out because this lady's partner came, and halfway through the tip, he's going, excuse me, with the square with the collar in it, could the collar go to the other end of the line? And all I could think about was if I'd have been out there, he would have said, excuse me, with the 2 collars in the square, would they go? Thank you so much for your time. We hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us.